This is Real World Product Management.
Hello everyone, my name is Vlad, and you're probably watching this or listening to this, recording both the video and the audio separately, so it could be a podcast and a YouTube video. My name is Vlad. I am a host and the author of the Real World Product Management podcast. I started it in March 2020, right in the middle of a pandemic, to sort of cope with pandemic and the whole thing. And the podcast was had a pretty good run. We did 15 episodes. I almost always, except for the first and the last. Actually, no, scratch that. Except for the one first episode where I was doing things solo. I believe every single episode after that had someone, one or two people as guests. This is me trying to restart the podcast, trying to sort of restore and continue the work I was doing and other people were participating in. Almost exactly a year after I stopped doing it. Last episode went out June 17th. I'm recording this on June 7th, exactly a year after. So we'll see how that goes. Like I said, I'm not just restarting it as if nothing happened. I've learned a lot. I've seen a lot of things, noted a lot of feedback. So I'm doing a lot of things differently. I'm gonna try a lot of new things. The previous 15 episodes. Let's go to season 1. I did mostly in the same canvas, same approach, same. Hey, this is the guest. They had something to tell us. We'll listen to the story that the guest is telling us, and then we ask questions. Kind of, sort of like an interview, but not exactly. I'm gonna try doing different things from now on. Maybe make it shorter. I remember some of the episodes ran for almost an hour and a half. I'm looking to record more episodes, but they potentially gonna be shorter. So we're looking at 20, 30, 45-minute episodes, but maybe, once a week, twice a week sometimes. We'll see how it goes. No promises. But I'm going to try to do different things. I'm going to try doing live videos, try leveraging community a lot more. Through the last year, the company I'm still working for, by the way, we've built an amazing community of people, an amazing community of product managers. A lot of them have tremendous amount of experience, huge lists of things they were able to achieve and they were able to accomplish. So hopefully I'll be able to drag some of them kicking and screaming onto this podcast. I know some of them were interested. Unfortunately, I was not available to continue the podcast, but hopefully now we'll be able to work on that. Additionally, the community on Reddit, which is what prompted me to start the podcast in the beginning, the community on Reddit began to be a lot more active. I've seen a lot of interesting people. I've seen a lot of interesting thoughts. One of the cornerstones of this podcast was the guests should not agree with the host, or host does not always agree with the guest, and that's what makes the conversation interesting. That's what I'm seeing in the community, so I'm hoping to drag in more people from Reddit, product management subreddit, see if we can give them a platform to express their opinions. If I'll have time today, I'll try to talk about one of those topics that were discussed that kind of piqued my interest. So again, like I said, no promises. We'll see how this is gonna go, and potentially we're still we're still in COVID pandemic. I'm not sure if it's been called off or not, but people are still a little cautious. I moved away from New York to a whole different state, so being there physically may not be an option. So we'll try to leverage online collaboration tools that have gone. We don't really remember, but when I started working on the podcast again, I figured that, hey, remember how last year we were struggling with, doing the recording or bringing several people in and getting good quality recording so we can post it as a podcast. I remember going through WebEx, going through Teams, Zencaster, Zoom. We've tried a lot of things. And surprisingly, it's gotten so easy now. Just a year after, a lot of online collaboration became almost like a non-issue. It used to be a lot harder, as far as I remember. All right, so that's the backstory, what happened, and why we're restarting the podcast. Now, podcast, as you remember, called Real World Product Management. The goal still the same. Bring in a real world perspective on things that people who are close to product management and maybe just starting in product management, they think that it's some kind of glorified position where you just tell other people what to do and they just hop to it and do it. We try to bring in the real world perspective on things. So, having said all that, one of the things that I always wanted to talk about, and I know it sounds corny, but it is one of the things that I wanted to talk about, and I felt pretty strong about it, are the top asked questions. And we've done a number of online conferences, the company I work for, and there's always a number of questions that come in, and they basically divide it into two parts. One is tactical, so specifically about the topic is being discussed, or a question about something somebody said during the presentation. And then there's a whole set of strategic, kind of like strategic questions, and they all start with one single question. How do I become a product manager if I am a blah, blah, blah? And that blah, blah, blah can be literally anybody. If I'm a software developer, if I'm a business consultant, if I'm a BA, if I'm a UX designer, if I'm an experience designer, if I'm a janitor, how do I become a product manager? I had a slightly different opinion last year, and we talked about it on some of the episodes. That opinion has changed. Guess what? People do change their opinion. I know that's not really cool thing to do. Everybody now has their opinion and they're sticking to it. I don't. That's kind of one of the things I bring to the table is I will make mistakes. I can make mistakes. I do make mistakes, and I try to fix them. And I try to, if my opinion was a mistake, or if I had to adjust my opinion based on facts, that absolutely will do that. So one of the things that we did discuss back in the early episodes was, how do you become a product manager? Most of our product managers back then came from BA. This is no longer the case. We are hiring off market. We're hiring from a lot of other sources. We do hire from experience design, UX design, business consultants. One trend that we've noticed, not in US, in some other geographies, is that people are coming from being within the general management sort of line of business, manager of a bank, CFO, director of operations, things of that nature. Apparently, one thing is IT pays better. Again, it's not US, so situation is slightly different in other countries. And another thing is that experience that they had in those roles helps them become product managers around IT for software products or whatnot. And it helps them get things moving, get things through, because they have that business acumen, or they have that understanding of how things work in the business or in the enterprise. And it helps them get better at this job faster. If you compare someone who comes from BA background, they know very well how to write requirements, how software works and how software is being built, but they have very little, if any, understanding of how business is conducted. What is, doing business? How does that whole thing work? And that's kind of the part where they struggle the most. These people who are coming from other non-IT backgrounds, but they have a lot of business acumen, they'll have a lot of business knowledge, they tend to be successful because they understand that overall big picture, and they get very well positioned in terms of, hey, I know how the business works. Just tell me what I need to do to get from the one step to another in order to make things happen at the business level. So people do get very successful if they come from non-business background, non-product or non-IT background, if they come with a business background. So how do you become a product manager? You learn. I recommend reading and taking classes. I've conducted about 100 interviews and assessments in the last year. So that year that I was not producing episodes, I was very heavily interviewing people. I was very heavily participating in product management assessments. So the difference between interview and assessment is when the company hires someone from outside, from the market, it's an interview. If we want to promote someone from within, and our company does that a lot, we run an assessment. So it's kind of like an interview, but it's internal interview. It's a different format. It's a lot harder, believe it or not. It's a lot easier to be interviewed and get an offer if you're on the market than it is to pass assessment and get promoted internally. So I've heard of cases when people would leave the company for a couple of years, get a bit more experience, and then come in sort of from the market instead of from within, and get into the position they were unsuccessful in getting internally. Dirty little secrets. So a little bit about the interviewing and assessments. I'm gonna kind of bundle them together because ultimately the goal of either interview or an assessment is to understand your skill set, understand your how does your mind work, right? How do you think, and are you suitable for this position? And sometimes we hire for a specific position. Sometimes we hire because we know we will get positions in the specific area, specific knowledge domain, and very rarely we stumble upon someone who's a generalist, somebody who can be put into almost any role aside from very specialized. Give you an example. I'm not like a super perfect generalist, but with my experience, my set of skills, I can be put in general finance, healthcare, retail, telecom, very general software, enterprise software. Like there's a set of domains that I can fit because I'm a generalist. But if you want me to work on a very specific domain, for example, clinical trials within life sciences, I'm not your guy because I don't have a sufficient depth of knowledge in that area. Or for example, if you want me to work on something that's very consumer oriented, that requires a lot of graphic design background or industrial design background, even though I may manage, but I'm not going to be a good fit because I lack specifically those industrial design or graphic design skills that would be preferable in a candidate for the role like that. So like I said, it's really rare that you get generalists off the market or internally, but they do exist, and we try to maintain kind of a healthy balance. So, and the trick is interviewing a specialist. Interviewing a specialist is easier than interviewing a generalist because with a specialist, you know their specific domain knowledge, a couple of domains, and you can kind of either drill deeper into that area, or you can kick them out of that area really easy and kind of take them out of their comfort zone and make them think in terms of pure product management, pure product methodologies, without relying on existing experience. With the generalist, it's harder because they've seen so many things, they've seen so many different things based on different domains. It's hard to get them out of their comfort zone. I'll talk a little bit more about that later, but I would generally break down the interviewing assessment, again, doesn't really matter, into two pieces. I want to talk more about I probably want to talk more about the interviews, because generally public don't get assessment, general public gets interviews when they're trying to get into new work. And I have been on both sides of the table. I have been the interviewee and I am an interviewer a lot. I have gone to interview for other roles because I want to understand what else is happening on the market and how people interview for this role. Obviously, early in the days during the pandemic, there were all kinds of things were going on. I haven't interviewed for about a year, but I don't think a lot of things change in terms of the interview methodologies. The acceptance rates have fallen, but the methodologies are most likely the same. I don't think they've changed in a year. So there are two types of interviews a product manager will go through when they are applying for a product manager role. And I want to make sure we're talking about product managers, not product owners. There's an interesting split in the product owner roles. There's a product owner as an agile role, which is a team member of the agile team. It could be a senior lead BA, developer, somebody who understands whole concept of thing or capability or feature or whatever team is working on, and they represent the team as they are a team's representative, and they work with other teams and with the product management office. Then there's another meaning to the term product owner, and that is a very senior person, kind of like a business owner in a sense, but because they own the product, everybody tends to call them product owner. And they are usually senior executive at the program or even higher level, where they tend to make business decisions about the product. And it could be senior executive, director level. They also get to be called product owner. We used to ask this question, we still do sometimes, but I'm trying to phase it out because, especially in the interviews, in the assessments is different, but in the interviews, it's really easy to fall into this trap of what is this specific company is calling a product owner? Are they calling product owner a person who sits with the developers and writes their user stories, or are they calling a product owner executive director of operations who makes calls about, hey, this product is going to do this in 3 years. Boom, go. So that's the trap. And so like I was saying, there are two levels of the interview. One is the peer interviews, where you get interviewed by delivery manager, project manager, program manager, and obviously your fellow product managers who tend to be on your level, maybe a little high, a little lower, but generally they're your peers. And then there's an executive interview. That's where your senior product owner or your executive director of operations come in and interviews you. And sometimes these occur on the same day at the same time. Sometimes they're different. Hope for your sake they're different, because it would suck to have both at the same time. What are the questions, right? What are we expecting to see from fellow product managers, and what are we expecting to see from executives? What type of answers? Sometimes they ask the same question, and I love it when it happens to me, because it allows me to leverage this understanding of the difference. But obviously, you don't have to love it. You can hate it if that's your thing. But sometimes they do ask questions like, so, how do you resolve the conflict in whichever form that the question is asked there? How do you approach building a roadmap? Again, there's a number of ways to ask this question. So what type of questions are coming from fellow product managers? and what kind of answers we expect to hear, and ultimately what are we looking for in the interviews. Well, the questions that are coming from product managers are usually trying to understand how much do you know in terms of product mindset, in terms of product management methodologies, in terms of building, creating and using product management artifacts. A lot of times we're seeing a resume that looks like the person is next Bill Gates or next Steve Jobs. The resume just screams, I'm a genius. And these usually make me very uneasy because I know something's up. So believe it or not, a perfect resume is not a recipe for success. It's more of a recipe for a little bit more scrutiny, I guess. So what happens is I probably should not talk about what other people are doing. I should probably only talk about what things that I do. Not, my secrets are my secrets, their secrets, their secrets. So we, when we interview, usually there's one person who's leading the interview and then others kind of supporting them. So if I'm the interview lead, I do what I think is right, others supporting me. If I'm not the lead, I look for clues from the interview lead and support them in their questions. That's usually how it works. So if I'm the lead, if I'm asking the questions, I want the candidate to elaborate on some of the things that they've listed in the resume. Best thing I can ask is, what was your role, or what specifically you did on this, working on this product. There sometimes people would say, I did this, I did this, I did this, I did this, and there's too many I's. And although the interview is the time to brag, it is when you absolutely must leverage your knowledge, your expertise. You should brag. The interview is your time to brag. However, if you always say I suspect that you have done absolutely nothing by yourself. I expect everything whenever you say I, you just wanted to say we, and then consciously or subconsciously you just think, oh no, I can't say we, I have to say I, and I'm gonna say I, and you're saying I all the time. So ideally you should say, hey, my team did this and my part in it was this. If I don't know, a good example would probably be, my team was working on this product. I sat down with a CIO or CEO. We did the ideation. We came up with this idea. I did research. I talked to my developers. We came up with the product. I talked to my developers. We came up with the POC, the proof of concept. Developers built, this technical prototype, or UX designers or UX folks built this, visual prototype. We looked at it, we liked it. I took it upon myself to create kind of like a high-level roadmap. We dived into it with the teams. We broke it down into blah blah blah, BAs or POs wrote user stories, and the rest is history. That's the right thing to tell your story. But if you're gonna say and that's something I did hear it, so it's not unusual to hear. I came up with this idea. The CEO told me to go and look into this, and I came up with this idea. I wrote the requirements. I wrote all the user stories. I created wireframes. I did that. Nope, no, you didn't. No, you didn't. Nope, no, I'm sorry. I don't believe you. I just don't. So another thing that I've noticed a lot of companies started doing, I do it myself, I know others are, is giving you an example, a sample product. No, I'm sorry, not the sample product as in here's your sample product. If you were to build a Google Glass from the scratch, right? What would you do? How would you build it? How would you do it differently? Or if you were to build a system that should track online usage of something, how would you approach it? How would you do it? So those types of questions, they're technically scenarios, right? In good consciousness. And if somebody who's interviewing you expects you to answer these questions correctly 100% of the time, they're out of their mind. You should not be working for the company like that. Just my personal opinion. But you should not be hitting 100% all the time. You should be getting close, but don't expect to be 100% on. I had a case when a fellow product manager who was interviewing me was basically trying to find out if I can configure Google Ads platform for a specific client. I don't know why. I don't know what was the purpose of it. I don't know how much did he learn about me, but it didn't go well. Ultimately, a good interview should allow you as a product manager to demonstrate that you can operate within the product mindset. You should be able to do discovery. You should be able to do, get from ideation through discovery, through, product vision, product strategy, product roadmap, define the MVP, define some kind of sort of preliminary plan. Get to the point where you're able to demonstrate you're not just, I know what the product lifecycle is, but you can navigate the product lifecycle. You know exactly what happens at each step of the way. Sometimes you may miss things because you're under pressure. Everybody understands that interviews are pressurized environments, but nobody in their right mind should be expecting you to hit the nail on the head 100% of the time. Ultimately, a good product manager should be able to leverage their existing experience, or if you're a brand new product manager, their knowledge. And if you don't know the answer to the question, that's normal. I'd be very cautious about the person who knew all the answers to all the questions I'm asking. Here's a dirty little secret. I don't know the answers to those questions. And if you know them, then you should be interviewing me, or you should own the company I work for if you know all the answers to all those questions. Because the trick to it is not knowing the answers, but showing how you get to the answer. To me, it's pretty obvious. If I'm asking you, hey, so you want to build a Google Glass, right? So I'm going to reuse that example because I already mentioned it. So you want to build Google Glass. So who's your target audience? Who are you going to sell it to? I don't know. I don't know. But if you tell me, oh, that's easy. All the hipsters or all the vloggers or bloggers or Instagram or TikTokers. Well, maybe. I don't know. Prove it. Show me how you got there. Show me that these are the people who will be able to pay for it, and then we'll have a conversation. But using this example, instead of telling me, oh, all the vloggers, bloggers, the YouTubers, TikTokers, I want you to say things like, well, we're going to do, I don't know, pressure test a few hypotheses. Like, let's see if bloggers will like it. Let's see if travel bloggers, food bloggers, whatever. Let's see if military will like it. Let's see if, I don't know, somebody else will like it. Doctors and clinicians. Maybe there's other niches. But I want you to kind of see the process. I want you to demonstrate the process. I want to see the process. I don't want to get an answer right away. Your answer means nothing if it's not supported by something. There's a lot of talk about data-driven decisions. That's fine. You can do that. That's basically pressure testing hypotheses would be your data collected that you will use to inform the decision. Sometimes you go by a hunch. Sometimes you don't have enough data. In the enterprise world, with enterprise software products, especially in early stages of enterprise software products, you just don't get to have that data. You don't know. You can make an educated guess. You can estimate. That's what happened to me early in my career or the company I work for. I was working on an enterprise product. I was launching it first time ever, bringing it to the market. we had absolutely no idea how many companies there would be interested. We know each of our clients, each of the companies, to a degree, suffered from same problems that prompted our company, to create this product, but we didn't realize how hard it would be to sell it. And it took us a few months to actually zero in on proper positioning, on how do I talk about this product to my client. Just that part alone took a few months, and it's really hard. So if I'm asking a question like that and you have an answer right away, I don't know. So to summarize, what are the questions from product managers? What are we looking for? What kind of answers we're expecting? We're expecting to see how you think. We're expecting to see how you would approach this problem. How would you try to solve it? What is your methodology? What are the tools? What are the ways of thinking? How do you do this, basically? I don't really care what the answer is, as long as you walk me to getting to that answer, to getting it. Here's my process. Here's how would I approach this. I think I'm gonna get X as a result. Okay, let's assume that that's your result and move on with the interview, right? But if you just tell me, oh, it's gonna be whatever. I had a person we were talking about developing mobile application for a pretty wide audience, pretty large set of people, and the person just straight up told us, nope, we're not doing Android. iPhone is the way. Android is a really insignificant share of the market, so we're not going to waste our time building anything for Android in the first couple of years of this product. We're just going to go ahead and build iOS. And that was, for me, that was pretty indicative of the way the person thinks. If the person has all the answers, they don't have a methodology to get to those answers. They just know the answer by heart, and they're giving it to you. So, no, don't do that. Second part, the interviewing and assessment, the executive interviews. We don't do executive interviews as part of the assessment, at least not that I'm aware of, not at the level of product management, senior product managers, maybe higher, I don't know, nobody told me. But executives are exactly the opposite. So, which is why I said it would really suck to have an executive and a product manager interview at the same time. You would be in a really bad position, unless you listen to me and I tell you what to do. So executives want clarity. They exist in the world where things constantly break. The things, and I hear and I ask, I get a chance to ask, what keeps executives up at night? And it's uncertainty. They live and breathe by uncertainty. Their whole, well, technically speaking, their whole existence is to make money for the company they work for. But what that means in the real world is they are battling uncertainty. There's an uncertainty, there's a risk, and they try to address it. The more certainty they have, the better they feel, the better their projections come to reality. The more uncertainty they have, the worse they off. Their projections don't meet the reality. Things go bad. So with that said, when the executive asks you questions, they don't really want the process, at least not to the same extent as the product managers. When the executive asks you a question, so tell me about the roadmap. My answer to that is usually, well, I confer with the team, I work with the team, I communicate across multiple teams, get their feedback, kind of collect it all together, put it all together, make a presentation for whichever the forum, whichever the meeting is, to discuss it with the executives, and present my findings, present the risks, present how they would affect the outcomes, maybe propose a couple of what-if scenarios to make sure everybody understands why certain decisions are better, why certain decisions are worse, what should you do if things happen. So to kind of sort of paint the bigger picture for the executive to help them make the informed decision you expect them to make. And I believe that's the biggest difference. The executive does not want to know your process. When you're thinking about executives, always think about your customers. They are effectively the same in a way that customer does not want to buy a drill. They want to buy holes in the wall. Same as with the executives. The executives don't want your process. They don't want you to sell them product mindset. They don't want you to sell them, Jira versus other tools, or Confluence versus AHA, or whatever. They don't care. Give them what they want. They want information. They want clarity. They want to understand what are you doing today and what's going to happen to the product in 6 months, 12 months, 2 years, 3 years, and so on. So that's probably the biggest difference, and that's probably the biggest disconnect when people come into the product management interview and they start talking to HR and they start talking to product management and then they start talking to executives. They tend to tell a similar story, and they tend to fail. And the reason why they fail is because you're the product and you're presenting it to different audiences. You're presenting the audience to your users, and then you're presenting your story to the users, and then you present your story to the buyers. And as always in product management, when you're positioning your product, there are users and there are buyers. There are people who pay for it and there are people who use it. If you approach it from this perspective, you will immediately, again, if you're a product manager, you will immediately understand the difference and you will immediately change your pitch. Hopefully that helps. All right. One of the last things I want to discuss today, here's my screen, and I have some notes here, and I have a little plan, and I wanted to talk about product manager artifacts. A lot of times we see in interviews, in assessments, and in the real work, in the work that we're doing for clients or in internal products, we see people either over leveraging or underusing certain artifacts, systems, solutions. One of the things I do want to talk about is sometimes people get obsessed with tools. I literally remember, I remember a company spending literally a month deliberating which system to use. Should we use Jira? Should we use Microsoft product? I forgot what it's called. It used to be TFS. Should we use AHA? And guess what? They ended up not using anything. They ended up using Excel. But they spent a month talking about it. Why? Because they are obsessed with the tools instead of being obsessed with the process. I used to say this. I don't think it holds true anymore because of work from home, work remote, and all that jazz. But it holds true in a way that you can use online tools to that extent. But I used to say that my job as a product manager can be done with pen and paper. I don't need tools. I need a whiteboard. Obviously, it's an exaggeration, but it's a good exaggeration because I don't really need to use Jira. I don't really need to use, AHA. I can draw. It would be very convoluted exercise and probably not really productive, but I can draw or write everything down on a piece of paper. I don't really need to use any of these sophisticated tools as long as my process is good. As long as my process helps me move things through. If my process is broken, no matter which tools I'm going to use, it's not going to help. Nothing will get done. If my process is broken, I can use the most sophisticated, the best tools in the market, mind maps, mind reading applications, whatever, AI systems that will predict with predictive analytics. Nothing will help if your process is broken. So one of the things that we're seeing in the real world is people being obsessed with the tools instead of a process. I would actually argue that a good product manager is should be good process enabler. If you come into the existing product to work on the existing product, or if you're just starting and building a new product, one of the most important things to do is set up the right process. Time and time again, I am seeing, and my colleagues are seeing, that if the process is wrong, no matter how good you are, no matter how talented your developers, no matter how talented your designers, no matter how great everybody is, bad process will ruin everything. If you're writing user stories, if you're building technology before you even looked at the product roadmap, or if you don't have a roadmap, if you don't have a process to review the roadmap because it's a living, breathing document, those developers will get upset, they get frustrated, they will leave you in like 3 to 6 months tops, and you'll end up with bad developers, bad product roadmap, bad process, back to square one. So one of the things that we're seeing, and as a matter of fact, back to the interviewing, to kind of circle back and tie it up, when we interview or when we do the assessments, one of the things we try to get indirectly, because obvious direct questions prompts the obvious direct response, so we're trying to see if the candidate is actually thinking about it, is give us a plan of work. Let's say sometimes it's a plan how you plan to release the MVP. Sometimes it's a question of what is your personal plan for the next 1 to 3 months. But it's always a question about what is your plan to do X, Y, and Z for the product you're building. And part of the expected answer is, I want to set up a process, a product development process. There's whatever your process, whichever methodology you subscribe to, it doesn't really matter. I'm not going to judge you, or nobody's going to judge you unless they're religious about a particular, framework or a particular approach, and then anybody who's not using X process is not our candidate. But you have to say the magic words. Basically, you have to say that hey, I want to make sure my process works. I want to make sure that we're doing whatever. If we're doing agile, right, then we have all the proper ceremonies for the product office to review the roadmap, break down product capabilities into features, into epics, however your hierarchy works, and you do this, and you review regularly your business goals, your OKRs, your whatever. Again, depending on what your terminology is, what your concept is, what your methodology is, but give me something that will make me feel better about you having a process to build the product. Actually, which reminds me, one of the candidates I've interviewed said something like, "Hey, we're gonna spend first 60 days building a roadmap, then we're gonna fix it in time, write all the documentation, write all the product requirement documents, and we're gonna start building a product." And I generally like my candidates. They're very smart people. They just stressed. And I ask the candidate, so what's going to happen if developers discover something that doesn't really fit your roadmap, or isn't in the product PRDs, in the product requirement documents? And the candidate responded, well, this shouldn't have happened because we would figure out everything as we write the PRDs. So there should be no surprises, or very, very minimal risk, because everything should be thought about up in advance. That didn't go well. Which brings me, as a final note, brings me to the topic that I picked on Reddit, because I promised we're going to leverage Reddit. And this whole podcast started off of me reading Reddit. Somebody came up, hopefully you know who you are, and you'll leave me a comment or something. Somebody came up with the topic on Reddit about what's a good template for product requirement documents. And I believe, I don't want to look it up right now to save time. I believe my biggest problem with the write-up was about 10 to 20% of the document would be me talking about what the product is, and about 80%, 70 to 80% of the document is how we're going to build the product, all the architecture, design, wireframes, technological specifications, functional specifications, very, very detailed documentation from which then you can construct user stories. My concern was, hey, so you just write this one document and people can just take them and write user stories off of that one document. And the author said something to extent of, yes, this is a pretty self-sufficient documentation. They doesn't need anything aside from obviously design mockups and the UI UX component. And I said, you do understand this is insane, right? You're gonna spend 6 months writing it and it's gonna be obsolete probably 4 months in. Person disagreed with me. They had a completely different vision, which is why I'm bringing this up, because I do want to give voice to people who disagree with me or I disagree with them. And one of the main concerns that, and it actually happened to me more than once, specifically with prepared or pre-recorded, pre-written PRDs before the beginning of the work on the product, is that they're obsolete the moment you start writing them. And here's why. Because you have set a certain vision in your head of how things should work. Allegedly, you did some research. You did some user experience testing. I'm giving you all the benefit of a doubt, right? You did do some discovery. The problem is, in the real world, building product is always going to be a continuous discovery, continuous evaluation, continuous reassessment of where we are, what we're doing, how are we solving an individual issue. So if let's say these PRDs were written in June 2020 when I stopped doing this podcast, and I am here today in June 2021, it's not the case. I'm giving you a hypothetical case. If I had a PRD written in 2020 and I start development in, I don't know, September, October, November, something like that, and I am here today 1 year after, not a single word of those PRDs will still hold true. How do I know that? Because it happened to me more than once. There's no way you can write anything if you're doing product development, if you're not doing waterfall. If you're actually doing genuine product development and following one of the product development methodologies, there's no way in hell you can do this and survive. Either a product is dead, most likely your PRDs are dead, but either a product is dead, or your teams are dead, or your product management team is dead, but most likely your PRDs are dead. Because most of what usually happens in the real world, people tend not to read documents that are longer than a couple of pages. Someone actually, we were working on the client's assignment, and we gave them a playbook, product management playbook, that was only 80 slides. It's not in a book, it's just slides. And each person had maybe 20 slides to look at. They didn't even have to read the whole thing. They could have just flipped through, but their part was 15 to 20 slides. Not like 20, but there's an overlap, but at most each person needed to read 20 slides. And they told us straight to our faces, nobody's going to read the PowerPoint deck in 80 slides. And we're like, no, they will, because that's your job. And if you're writing a documentation to developers, if you're a product manager who's telling developers how to write code, if they're good developers, they laugh in your face and they'll leave and work on another product. If they're bad developers, they're going to listen to you and you're going to end up with a mess of a product, if you're going to get the product at all. And again, I'm not trying to offend anyone. I'm just speaking strictly from experience. I would never, ever, ever imagine I would have to write a functional specification that tells the developers how to build something. I will tell them what I want built. I will never tell them how to do it. Because, in full honesty, I'm smarter than developers in that particular niche where I understand what needs to be done, what is the problem, what is the solution, what the customers want, what the business owner wants, what business wants, right? And notice how I say what. I always say what they want, what needs to be built, because I'm responsible as a product manager. I'm responsible for what. Now, when I hand it over to developers, they're way smarter than me, or solution architects and developers and tech leads. They're way smarter than me in terms of how to achieve that. They know way more than I do. I have a very basic understanding of things because I need to, but if you ask me to write code, I wouldn't, and I won't, and I can't. And that's because they are the smart people in the room who are smarter than me, who will tell me, hey, Vlad, we think we're going to approach it from this direction, but if something goes off, we have an alternative way. And I said, yeah, build a proof of concept, build something that will help you determine what's the right way to approach it, and that's how things work. I decide what needs to be built in conjunction with business, in conjunction with UX. Then UX and developers and solution architects will go back to their drawing board and tell me how they're going to build it. And all I need to do is I need to look at their proposed solution and see if it does the what, if it solves the problem I came to them with. If I came to them, if I came to development with a problem, hey, I need, I need a chat, and they come back to me and giving me, a flight simulator, we're probably not looking at the same thing. But if I came to them and told them, hey, I need a flight simulator, and they gave me a flight simulator that has one plane today, but they will be able to scale it in the next couple of years to add other planes, awesome. That's what I was looking for. So with that said, a little bit about the the interviews and the approach and obsession with tools and some of the artifacts. Don't do PRDs. They are the abomination of product management world. Sometimes you have to for documentation purposes. Sometimes you have to for audit and legal and compliance purposes. I've seen those things. They do happen, but don't expect to build anything. Don't expect to build the actual product off of a single PRD. I think it's unreasonable. I think it's bad for business, and it's not going to make anybody happy. It's just waste of time, effort, money, and did I mention waste of time? Yes. So that is it for today. Hopefully I'll be able to continue doing this. Let me know if there's a video. Hopefully there's going to be a video. I'll be able to edit this. I've never done this before. It's going to be my first time. But hopefully I'll be able to edit audio. So at least there's that. There's podcast, there's video. Let me know if there are any questions, if there are any ideas, if there are any people you want me to bring in, type of people. Obviously I can't bring Bill Gates to talk about his marital problems, but we might be able to bring in people who work in a specific industry, specific areas. We'll have a lot of talented people in the company. There's a lot of talented people on Reddit, off Reddit, on LinkedIn, so we'll be able to talk to them, and we'll be able to bring them in and interview them same way we did before. So hopefully that's it. Thank you all for watching, listening, and see you later.
You've been listening to The Real World Product Management, and I've been your host, Vlad Grubman. Until the next time.